Today, we're cracking open Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature. But forget thinking of this as some dense, dusty textbook. We're going to treat it as what it really is, a practical, hands-on code book for navigating one of the most complex environments out there, the modern office. So, let's dive right in.
You know the feeling, right? One minute, you and your team are cruising along on a project, and the next, a key colleague is just undermining you, seemingly out of nowhere. Or, hey, maybe you're the one who fired off that angry email you regretted the second you hit send. We've all been there, just feeling completely lost in the fog of human behavior.
But what if I told you that all this chaos, it isn't just random noise? What if it's actually a system? A pattern based on some really deep primal wiring inside all of us. And if you can learn to see that pattern, well then, you can learn to read the code. So, our first step is to just accept a fundamental truth. The office, and really life in general, is an unseen social game. Most of us just operate on the surface, reacting to what people say and do. But we almost never dig deeper to figure out what's really driving them.
And here's the first big pill to swallow, one that's a bit tough on the ego. We love to think of ourselves as these super strategic, logical beings, especially at work. But Greene's argument is that, deep down, we are fundamentally emotional creatures. We're constantly being swayed by forces we're not even aware of, things like insecurity, envy, and our own tribal instincts.
So the very first key to cracking this whole code is to turn that magnifying glass on yourself. Seriously, before you can even begin to understand anyone else, you have to face the primary driver of all human action, emotion. Greene calls this the big one, the foundational law, the law of irrationality.
Think about this constant tug-of-war that's going on inside of us all the time. Your rational self, it's all about the plan, about hitting those quarterly goals, it's focused. But at the exact same moment, your emotional self is getting all fired up because of a comment your boss made, or a wave of insecurity you felt in a meeting. And that emotional reaction is what leads to those reactive patterns we all know and regret.
And this is so crucial. Rationality isn't something you're just born with. It's a skill. Think of it like a muscle you have to build over time. It's the power you cultivate to hit the pause button between that emotional trigger and your reaction. It gives your thinking brain a fighting chance to catch up. The ancient Athenian leader, Pericles, is the absolute gold standard for this. This guy was dealing with a devastating war and a deadly plague at the same time. Talk about a high-pressure work environment. But he trained himself to never make a big decision when he was in the grip of a powerful emotion. He knew that the biggest threat wasn't the army outside the city walls, but the panic and irrationality inside them. For us, that means realizing the biggest risk to our project isn't a competitor, it's our own team's fear and frustration. Okay, so once you start getting a handle on your own emotional self, something amazing happens. You start to see other people way more clearly, more objectively. And that brings us to our second law, the law of role-playing, where we start to see the workplace for what it often is, a giant stage.
Let's be honest, we are all fantastic actors. Your boss plays the role of the decisive leader. Your colleague plays the part of the super helpful team player. We all wear these masks to present the best version of ourselves and, to hide our own insecurities or selfish motives. Now, this isn't always a bad thing. It's a basic human survival skill. Your job is just to learn to see what's going on behind the performance.
And you can spot the truth in these little nonverbal leaks. For example, a colleague says, "Yeah, great idea." But you notice their arms are crossed and their feet are literally pointing toward the door. Their body is telling a completely different story. Or the microglare, that split-second squint that reveals a flash of envy right before their polite work face is back on. These mixed signals are where the truth is hiding.
Deception has its own tells too. You gotta be a little wary of someone who is suddenly too friendly. Why? Because lying takes a ton of mental energy. Their brain is working so hard to maintain the story that it messes up in other areas, like a smile that's a little too big and doesn't quite reach the eyes, or a posture that's strangely stiff and still. Remember, reality is messy. A performance that's too perfect is usually just that, a performance.
Okay, so we've laid out the problems, our own irrationality and other people's masks. But knowing this stuff is pretty useless without a plan of action, right? So let's build your personal toolkit for becoming a more rational, more strategic observer of this whole human game.
Think of these 3 steps as your new daily mental workout.
First, just become a student of you. What really triggers your defensiveness? What situations make you anxious? Second, create space. The ability to wait 24 hours before sending a critical email, that is a legitimate superpower. And third, stop wishing people were different. Just observe their patterns for what they are, without judgment, like a scientist, so you can better predict what they'll do next.
And here is your field guide for when you're trying to figure someone out. Use this 5-point check. Number 1, ignore their friendly words. Focus on what they actually do. 2, look for patterns because people rarely do something only once. 3, notice those emotional leaks we talked about. 4, stress is the great revealer of character, so watch how they act when things get tough. And 5, see if they treat you the same way they treat everyone else. These clues are way more reliable than anything they will ever tell you.
And this, right here, is the ultimate transformation. Look, the goal isn't to become cynical or to manipulate people. It's to stop getting blindsided. You move from being a pawn in the office's emotional dramas to becoming an astute player who actually understands the board, the pieces, and the hidden rules of the game.
In the end, this whole journey really starts and ends with awareness. Chekhov's insight here is just so profound. When we finally see ourselves and others clearly without the illusions, that's when real change and true mastery actually become possible. So, the final question I want to leave you with is this. This knowledge isn't just theory, it's a set of keys. Now that you have the ability to better understand yourself and the people you work with, how are you going to choose to navigate your world differently?